Welcome everyone to AbbeyCast. Today is August 12th, 2021, and our guest today is Father Joseph Novielli of the Norbertine community here at Daylesford Abbey. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
You're welcome, Andrew. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. It's nice to have you on. And just to give our listeners and viewers a little bit of background about these last few podcasts that we've been doing, I guess you could look at them as a series of sorts, beginning really with Abbot Dominic and then even Father Andrew and Abbot Dominic, how we kind of talked about their families and their spiritual life and their families. That's really evolved now into conversations more honed in on vocation, and vocation in the larger sense, but also in terms of professed religious life here as a Norbertine at Daylesford Abbey, and what has led all of the different Norbertines, in a sense, to their vocation here as a priest at the Abbey. So today we have with us Father Joseph, and we'd just like to know, what was your family like growing up when it came to the presence of faith in the household, and how did that shape you when it came to discerning your vocation as a Norbertine?
Well, thank you, Andrew, and happy to be with you today. Yes, when I reflect back on my vocation story, I always address it God right straight with crooked lines.
I like
that. Because I think that kind of sums up my vocation story. I came from Italian immigrant parents, and very interesting, my parents, they couldn't have children for the first 13 years, and when they did, they had 4 boys. I was the second of the 4 boys. So we were very, very welcome, very loved.
Yeah.
But my parents could have been like our grandparents. And so as we grew up, we helped them to maneuver the system of America. My father was literally illiterate. He couldn't read nor write, but he became a first-class pipe fitter at Atlantic Refining Company. Right now, I guess it's Sunoco.
Mm-hmm.
But they were loving, caring parents, and they lived their faith. Mm-hmm. They lived their faith. They went to church every Sunday. They sent all of us to Catholic school. Mm-hmm. And I must say, besides my parents, the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters had a great influence on me. Of course, you went to grammar school, and in those days we had sisters all throughout 8th grade. And as all you had to tell them is you were interested in becoming a priest, and your grade level went up, I think. So, but I was interested in becoming a priest from a very early age. As a matter of fact, I found this little booklet that has my name on it, and it's probably before I even made my first communion, or in preparation for the first communion. And they have little pictures you had to color in, and a little chalice and ciborium on it. I don't even know if I could spell my name properly at that time.
So about how old were you? Like 7 or 8 maybe?
I don't even think I was that old. Wow. And there's a picture of, I don't know if it's supposed to be a priest or an older boy with incense in his hand, and I have written on the bottom, "This is what I want to be someday." I spelled some, S-U-N. But at any rate, at a very early age, I felt called to be a priest.
So what was it in particular? Was it the presence of the faith in your household? Was it witnessing Mass? Was it some interactions you had with priests?
I think it was all of those.
Okay.
It was all of those. It wasn't one main thing. Mm-hmm. And as a grammar school kid, I started to go to daily Mass.
Okay.
7:15 Mass. And then I became an older boy, and I didn't achieve well academically. I was never a straight A student. I was in the middle of the road. But being an older boy, I exceeded. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of appointments, as we called them those days, and was even MC at the different functions. So,
oh wow.
So I was, called upon to do a lot of ministerial work at the young age. Now remember, this is the Trinity Mass.
Okay.
And, the parishes were very big. We had 7 priests in our parish, and we had about 20,000 people.
And I was going to ask about your parents being Italian immigrants. Did they learn English? Do they speak mostly Italian in the home? Do they worship in Italian, or it was the Latin Mass? So
It was a Latin Mass. No, my mother spoke perfect English.
Okay.
And she was bilingual in English and Italian.
Okay.
And my father, I used to say he spoke Chinese when I wanted to tease him, because he spoke broken English.
Right.
And but then when they didn't want us to hear what they were speaking about, they would speak in Italian. And of course, we learned enough Italian to know what they were speaking about.
Right.
So, so that was very, very interesting, having them, just guide us. But they weren't, I would say, super religious.
Okay.
My mother certainly taught us the prayers. I remember her teaching me the Our Father in Italian and in English. One of the first prayers I remember. And so, we had religious articles throughout the house. I remember a little bust of Mother Cabrini, an Italian saint, of course. But just they lived out their goodness. They lived out their goodness and their faith. And that was reinforced by going to Catholic school and learning more about our faith. So, that continued through, and then we went to high school. So after grammar school, going to high school, myself and my 3 brothers all graduated from a Norbertine school with Southeast Catholic when we first went there.
Now you said you are the
Second.
of those.
So
And how far apart?
we're about 3 years apart.
Okay, all right.
We're about 3 years
So
apart.
some of you may have been in school together then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
So I remember when I was a senior, my brother Robert was a freshman. And so I remember, so we were in school together some of the times. And my brothers are wonderful. They're very good Catholics, even to this day. I always say they're better Catholics than I am. But so, and then I encountered the Norbertines in high school, and I was very, very impressed with them. As a kid, I knew I wanted to become a priest, but I didn't feel called to the diocesan clergy.
Okay.
I felt called to community life. And for whatever reason, that always stuck in my mind. And then we used to have priests come and help at our parish, and they were Norbertines. And I was drawn by the white habit they wore, and just by their friendliness. And that was kind of reinforced when I went to school, and a lot of the priests took me under their wing as kind of a big brother they were to me.
Okay.
And so that was, and I saw their down-to-earthness.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, were there other orders that you were exposed to at
Yeah,
the
that's a
time?
good question, Andrew. Thanks for asking. So what happened was, in my senior year, in those days, if you were going to enter religious life, you usually did that for the boys and girls in senior year. So I applied to the community, the Norbertines, and along with several other of my classmates. And my mother had asked me to stay home because my father got very seriously ill, and my brother was going to the service, and if I would stay home for moral support, which I did. They turned out to be very difficult years for me because I wanted to go to religious life, but I couldn't. Then what I started to think about is, hey, the Norbertines are the only community that I really know. Although in high school, I used to go to a Trappist monastery in Berryville, Virginia, and take some of our classmates with me, and we got very familiar with the Trappists there. So I seriously thought about becoming a Trappist until my mother said something to me one day. She said, "Son, don't ever think about becoming a Trappist." I says, "Why not, Mom?" She says, because you can't keep your mouth closed that long. So my mother knew me better than I knew myself. In those days, a Trappist took a perpetual vow of silence.
Okay.
And so at any rate, but then I did go visit other communities too.
Mm-hmm.
And through that period of time, it was 3 years, I had a very good spiritual director. His name was, we called him Holy Joe, Father Joe Coleman. And I would meet with him at least once or twice a month, take a bus. He lived in Chester, so it was not around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But he really directed me.
Mm-hmm.
And then through discernment, he said, why don't you just apply being a brother?
Okay.
So I applied to the community, the Norbertine community, in the summer of 1960.
Mm-hmm.
And I was accepted right away as a brother. That was in 1960. And just this week, it will be 61 years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. That I left our family in South Philadelphia
Okay.
and joined the community as a lay brother.
Now, can I ask you why he said, or why he suggested, Holy Joe suggested to join as a brother?
Because I wasn't getting into other communities.
I see.
They had some strict regulations, and
Okay.
so I wasn't making it. And so the spiritual director said, try to go as a brother.
Mm.
So I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I was accepted right away.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't hardly like the process that you go through today.
Okay.
So, and so I entered, and that was right here in Paoli. It's YMCA today.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent the first year and a half, almost 2 years there. And my postulancy was 6 months. For me, it ended up 8, and then 2 years of novitiate. And then I went to Madison, Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
for my final year novitiate, and then came back for my first profession here.
Okay.
So
Here at the Abbey, or was it still at the...
we weren't an abbey yet, we were a priory.
Okay.
So when I came back, after being a year in Wisconsin, and they were difficult years for me because my mother had died when I was a first year novice. She was only 57. And fortunate enough, I was able to go home and spend some time with her before she died. And she wasn't able to come to my vestition, so she saw me vested in the white habit.
Okay.
So that the community was always very flexible
Yeah.
and realistic, where some of the communities were very stringent,
Okay.
and you couldn't leave for
Right.
anything.
Right.
So after that, I was asked by the superior, we were becoming an independent foundation then. 1963, we became an independent foundation. And Father Neitzel was the prior then.
Okay.
And he asked Abbot Colleen, who was our major superior at St. Norbert Abbey, to if I could become his secretary. Now, in those days, there was a big distinction between priests and brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not just only in our community, that was in all communities that had clerics and brothers in it.
Okay.
So, usually a priest was always the major superior secretary. So I said to the brothers at the time, I don't know if I could do this or not, but I'm going to try to get a foot in the door for us, because this will help us to get some equality here.
I see.
Because the brothers at the time didn't have equal status.
Right.
You could be in the community 50 years, and if there was a new group of fratres, that means seminarians coming in, they would sit above you at table because they were going to be clerics.
Huh.
So in those days, you sat according to rank. Everybody sat according to rank.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Like the
it's very
military.
interesting. Everything was in rank.
Yeah.
But the brothers, even though if you were a solemn vow brother, you sat below the young kid who just came in and was vested.
Yeah.
And he could have been just 17 years old.
So did that form like a kind of a collective mindset of sorts amongst the brothers as
Oh
well
yeah,
as the clerics?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I remember, you know, at the time, I remember the brothers didn't wear this cape.
Mm-hmm.
It was taken away from them years ago
Okay.
because of whatever. That's another whole story.
Right.
I want to go into. But there was a lot of tradition. You know, being in a community with 900 years old, you could imagine all the tradition. So I remember there was brothers' conferences. So I got involved with brothers' conferences nationally.
Okay.
And worked with some Jesuit brothers and other communities.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to get inroads because this was Vatican II had just begun.
Right.
So things were changing,
Mm-hmm.
and they're changing very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So the brothers wanted to try to get equal rights.
Right.
So I remember a couple of things, you know, with the major superior, Father Neitzel at the time. I said, you know, a new group is coming in, and I think we should change some things about the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So he always was a good listener.
Yeah.
But I always knew you better have a plan of what to do. You
Okay.
just didn't go in there and just give a problem. You better have some solutions.
Gotcha.
So I had the solutions. I said, well, I think a table, the priest at first, then brothers according to their status in the community,
Uh-huh.
then the oldest, then the frats according to their time.
Sure. Sure.
So he bought that. He bought using the cape.
Mm-hmm.
But the brothers couldn't vote. They had what you call active or passive vote
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And the first chapter, general chapter, after Vatican II, all religious communities were asked to update their constitutions,
Okay.
go back to their spirit of their founder, and so forth. So we did that. And I remember Father Neitzel going to the chapter, and I said to him, don't come back unless you get active voice for the brothers.
Yeah.
So one of the first things he said when he came back, not only did the brothers get active voice, but anybody who took solemn vows.
Okay.
Everybody took solemn vows, and that was a big hurdle.
Sounds like it.
It was a big thing. So everybody was on equal status who had solemn vows.
So was it Vatican II that really pushed for that change of greater equality throughout religious life?
Vatican II was a turning point
Mm-hmm.
in so many areas. You know, before that time, this church was pretty static.
Yeah.
Insofar that, you know, one of the bishops, I think Cardinal Ottaviano, had a motto, Semper Idem, always the same.
Mm.
Like there's never any change. Well, after Vatican II, you know, everything changed.
Yeah.
And things that we didn't even expect. But at any rate, you know, so and then the brothers had equal status with the clerics,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So that was a big hurdle, And then in 1969, I took solemn vows as a brother, and here's a couple of my pictures. There's a picture of my family, my father and brothers, and this was part of the solemn vows is you prostrate. That's a sign of total commitment to the Lord in taking your vows.
Mm.
So at that point in my life, I was very, very happy being a brother. I was the abbot's secretary. At that point, Daylesford Abbey was just getting established,
Okay.
and most of our guys were in Wisconsin
Mm-hmm.
studying, so there was very few here,
Right.
and the abbey was being built.
So you weren't actually living in the abbey?
No, we
Okay.
were living in Pine Brook,
Okay.
where Chapel Hill is now.
Okay.
They were farmhouses when we purchased the property
Mm-hmm.
in around 63.
Okay.
It was with the idea of building an abbey.
Right,
But we
right.
lived in those farmhouses for
Okay.
several years.
Mhm.
And they were very happy
Yeah.
times because the seminarians always wanted to come back and always asking me how could we maneuver them back here and so forth.
Okay.
So
All right. And there was like a pool there and everything,
there was
right?
a pool, and we had a lot of fun days, a
Yeah.
lot of esprit de corps, a lot of happy days. And, you know, I remember one day we must have had like 40 seminarians out in
Wow.
Wisconsin. So, and they would all write to me trying to see if I could get them to come back for the summer because their families were in the area and so
Okay.
forth. So I would say to Father Neitzel, I would say, well, if somebody could cook, we need a cook.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody could cook, and if they could type,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we could use 2 of them,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I remember I got Abbot Antonucci.
Mm-hmm.
He was a young seminarian then. So he came back and worked with me in the office,
Okay.
typing. Funny story about him is he started to take some classes. And I said, what kind of classes are you taking? Oh, computer science. I said, what is that? He said, he said, that's the latest technology. I said, it is? He said, yeah, someday people are going to have these little boxes and they could communicate with people all around the world by just pressing a few little buttons.
Mm-hmm.
I said to him, what have you been smoking? So, sure enough.
Pretty far ahead of his time.
Yeah. And then the other guy, David Lawler, God rest his soul, I remember we were sharing a room together, and he was cooking in the kitchen. And he turned to me, it was grand silence, and he said, John, I have a confession to make. I said, what's that? He said, I don't know how to cook. I said, I didn't hear that, but whatever you've been doing for the last 2 weeks, just continue to do that. And don't tell anybody else you don't know how to cook. So he did, and we got by. But we had a very
So what was he doing for those previous 2 weeks? He was making something?
He was making something up.
And it was working out and people
It was
were eating
working
and they were
out,
happy?
and yeah.
Okay.
But I remember he didn't even know how to light the oven. In those days, you had to light the oven manually.
Okay.
So he put his head in the oven, light the match, and turned on the gas,
Oh, jeez.
and put the match in, and the thing blew up and kind of scorched his hair. Thank God he didn't get hurt.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But I mean, he didn't know really how to operate.
That's funny.
So, but they were happy days, and then
Uh-huh.
moving into the Abbey was another, happy moment. So that was Solemn Vows was in '69.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting involved in ministerial work.
Okay. What kinds of ministries?
People would meet me, and I remember married couples would start coming to me for marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little training, but not much.
Mm.
I had more common sense.
Sure.
And so I remember starting to do individual and marital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And then people would ask me to go to the hospital,
Okay.
but I couldn't anoint them or hear their confession. I remember I had to take a priest with me.
Mm.
So I thought, maybe this is God's calling me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a specific moment in that period of time that I was coming back from my brother's house. He lived in Mayfair. That's about 45 minutes away. Sunday dinner. I was just riding the car, reflecting, and I was near City Line Avenue, and I heard a voice, saying in my inner soul, I want you to be ordained. Mm. And I was very, very upset with that because I was very settled in what I was doing.
Okay.
I remember saying to the Lord, didn't I do enough?
Mm.
I just taken solemn vows, a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lord said to me, I will be with you. I will be with you. So, and in those days, I just couldn't leave what I was doing and go away to a seminary or to go to Wisconsin because we were getting founded here.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to take afternoon and evening classes at Villanova and different places.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then tutorial classes.
Okay.
So, in those days, many of us had tutorial classes. We didn't get an MDiv like they do today full time.
Okay.
So many of our men taught us.
Okay.
So
it was kind of like just what you needed to know
just
to
what you
keep you
needed
moving
to know
along that
and,
track towards
right, so
ordination.
there were specific courses you needed in philosophy. We needed that at those time 5 specific courses, and specific courses for theology. So
Sure.
if we didn't have a priest teaching us those courses, if they weren't qualified, we had to go find them.
Okay.
So homiletics we didn't do here. I remember going to St. Charles Seminary for some of that, and so it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Then finally I said to Father Neitzel, I said, I need a year off to complete these studies. And because I was not only secretary then I became treasurer and secretary. And so we combined the two functions, but then as we grew, we had to separate them to different positions.
So yeah, it sounds like you were already very well ingrained within the community before seeking ordination.
Oh yeah, I was very, very much. And then in 1974, I was ordained with Abbot Dominic and Father Blaise Krautsack. Here's my ordination picture, and let me see if we have some pictures in here. Yeah, so we were, the three of us were ordained together, and the front page of the book, that was Bishop McDevitt. He was ordaining bishop. So that was a very happy time.
And that's May of 74. And when was it that you were driving towards City Line Avenue?
That was about 4 years before.
4 years, okay.
That was like 1970.
Okay.
So it was 4 years before. And so from that time on, most of my ministry has been at the Abbey. Except for 6 years. For 6 years I was in the city. I had the opportunity. I always wanted to do parish work.
Okay.
So that opened up actually Father Richard Antonucci's parish. And so I was there for 2 years, and then we had another parish set in South Philadelphia, St. Gabriel's.
Okay.
And I went there for 4 years and then was called back here for the refounding. But they were very happy years. A lot of hard work.
Now, is that ultimately the abbot who decides where your ministry is going to be?
Kind of by mutual.
Okay.
Kind of, we had a personnel committee, so you worked with the personnel committee. You kind of told them some of your desires and tried to put your desires with community needs together. So
Okay.
if they jive, fine.
Yeah.
So,
And if not, then we
if
still
not,
might need
you
you
go
to
back
do
to the
this.
drawing board.
And I would imagine there's some instances where we still need you to do this job. Is that the case?
Okay. Sometimes you say,
Yeah.
just try it.
Okay.
Just try it.
And I mean, I've been in that instance in ministry where like, oh, really, I don't know if this is me, and you get into it and it's awkward, and before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a totally different or new layer of my person that I had never become aware of until now.
Yeah. I remember when I was prior, because I had many different positions in the community, and I was prior for about 27 years. So being prior, you're also director of the personnel committee. And I remember one priest coming to me, and he wanted, a change from, he was a high school teacher most of his life. So I said, why don't you think of hospital ministry? I said, you really get a lot of spiritual benefits yourself, plus you could give so much. Well, he was scared to death, and he said, oh, I doubt I could do that. I doubt if I could do that. I said, I'll tell you what, try it for a year. If you don't like it, we'll look for something else. He tried it for a year and was there 15 years. He loved it.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of getting the self-confidence.
Right.
I could shift from being a high school teacher to a hospital chaplain. It's different, but I said, you'll never get the support from high school students that you get from hospital people, because they're in so much need of consolation and support and the sacraments and your pastoral care. So, so in the community, I did a lot of different ministries, but always involved with pastoral ministry.
Okay.
You know, I was involved with prison ministry.
Okay.
I did that. My brother in California, it's called Kairos, and he was rector, even though he's not a priest, he's a layman.
Mm-hmm.
They called him rector, and he wanted to give it a Catholic bent to it.
Oh, so it's not the Kairos high school program, or that most high schools
It's
are
the
colleges.
same name
Okay.
and kind of the same spirit,
Mm-hmm.
but altogether different format.
Gotcha.
Altogether different format. It's to build Christian community.
Mm-hmm.
That's the aim of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But how they do it is different.
Oh, I feel like I met someone this summer at a wedding that was telling me about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sure.
So this was out in California. So, and it was right after 9/11 because the airports were vacant.
Right.
People weren't flying, and so I remember, how can I let my brother down? You know, I have to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great experience for me. Great experience for me. I bonded with, especially this one fella, that till this day we communicate all the time.
Oh, cool.
He's back in prison, and you know, but we became really good
Okay.
friends, and I have helped him, you know, and he has helped me. So, very brilliant guy, but never had the upbringing,
Right.
values. So I was involved in prison ministry, did that several times, and even out here in our area. Chaplain at a girls' grammar school, Villa Marie Academy. The same sisters that taught me in grammar school. And then we helped the various parishes, you know. So that has always been, you know. And then the ministry of spiritual direction here. So plus I always had administrative jobs.
Okay.
So besides being prior, I was vocation director for a number of years, and then also development director, which I am now. So there's a lot. When you have a small community, you wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always enjoyed them. I can't say there was any ministry that I really didn't enjoy.
Okay.
They were different, but I always enjoyed them.
And when you look at that opportunity as truly a ministry, not as a job or a duty, then it is an opportunity for the practice of humility and service, and ultimately that's, I think, a rewarding experience in the end. It can be uncomfortable as we go through it, but looking back in hindsight, like you said, you've never had an opportunity that you didn't enjoy in some capacity. And something you said earlier too that stood out to me, it was when you were driving toward the city and you heard that voice of seeking ordination, and you said you were unhappy with that experience at first because, maybe these are my words now, but because you had been so established with what you were already doing, right?
Right, correct.
And doesn't it seem like that happens to be God's timing when we think we're it or in it or arrived or whatever, when we get that message of like, but wait, there's more.
There's more. And there's always more.
Yeah. Like those infomercials, but wait, there's
Yeah.
more, you know? Yeah, it is scary and uncomfortable and unsettling to realize that you know, infinite experience of God is for us too, and we're called to be in relationship with that. And that's scary, right? Because if God is that infinite horizon that we're always striving to be closer to and be in closer relationship with, that's like, in some sense, you know, like cliff diving, or, you know, like jumping out of an airplane, where there's a lot of trust involved in that.
Trust is a big thing. Humility is also a big virtue. But trust is basically letting go. Letting go and letting God, as they say in AA. Because I remember another situation was similar to that. You know, shortly after ordination, I was called to be house superior. Well, that was like being prior. And the community had a vote on it, and they did vote on it. and I was called to be the house superior. And I remember the next day getting up. I was in the bathroom, getting a shower. He says, "Oh my heavens, what did you do? Why did you ever say yes?" Oh, and then once again, I heard the Lord's inner voice saying to me, "I will be with you."
Okay.
And so he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, to step out of your comfort zone
Right.
is always challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping out of your comfort zone is, I never did this before,
Mm-hmm.
How do I know? Do I have the right tools? And what I always found out as I look back on my life as a Norbertine, as a priest and brother, is when God calls, he also blesses.
Mm.
So he isn't going to give you the calling and not give you the grace to achieve that calling.
I like that.
So he always gives you the grace to achieve the calling, and that's where the trust comes in.
Mm-hmm.
That's what basically faith is about.
Mm-hmm.
St. Paul tells us about hope. Hope wouldn't be hope. Hope is what is unseen.
Yeah.
And unseen, and basically he says in very refined language, but it's a matter of letting go.
Mm.
Letting go and letting the Lord be in control. And that takes humility.
It does.
That takes humility. When I took my first vows in '69, well, it's even before then, that was the solemn vows, but I took 2 sets of simple vows before. That was the protocol those days. And it called in our vow formula a conversion of my ways. Now, when you're in your 20s, you don't even know what your ways are.
Right.
You get older and you get set in your ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one is, so different than the other, but they're both, important, because trying to let go of my ways, now I know, I'm stubborn. Now I know I don't trust in the Lord. Now I know, more about myself than I knew 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, am I willing to follow the Lord's invitation and go the next step?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those that have that immediate association of religion or faith or God with the notion of sin, it's not it's my ways. It's not my sins, right? It's the ways in which I operate, I exist, and how they can all become better and perfected to allow us to be closer to God, right? Some of those may be like turning away from bad behaviors per se, or habits or ways of being, whatever, but it's just a constant seeking of that perfection of everything you're doing, from your your intellectual development to your spiritual development to your physical, right? It's trying to always be better in some sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like the way Ignatius of Loyola, he always says, strive for the greater honor and glory of God.
Yeah.
Not just for, so it's choosing between not good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually black and white.
Right.
But when you're choosing between two goods, that's where discernment comes in.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of prayer, reflection, and dialogue with spiritual people could help you to move on. And, working with people who are discerning of religious vocation, I find out that they're wonderful young men. Some are not that young.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the hardest things for them to do is let go.
Mm-hmm.
Let go. Because they have so much bought into the culture of the day, which is individualism, meism, and to let go of your own desires all the time. And to let God help to form you. It's a trust. It's a trust.
And it's not to say, as Vatican II very well established, that like the professed religious life is a more spiritual way of living than the life of the laity, but it's that letting go to that particular calling that God is calling you, the individual, to, right? That it's personal in that, and that letting go can take place within, I guess, you could say within a marriage or whatever one's call is, but when culture has definitely shifted more towards materialism, and you, especially within this community here, you follow a rule, right, by which your spiritual life is in a sense guided in some ways, in a lot of ways. There is more of that mindfulness towards those inner dynamics, right?
Right.
We're all, as people of God, called to be aware of those inner dynamics, to become aware of the God within us and within all people. But when you commit so much of your day intentionally to prayer, to worship, there's like you're upping the ante in a sense, I think. But as well as maybe as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, well, maybe then for the laity, they're upping the ante by not having that, right? They have to consciously seek that out.
You have to and I really think in religious life today, you have to consciously seek that out, because there's so many demands on you. Pre-Vatican II, the spirituality is a good spirituality, and I was happy I was formed with that spirituality, because it taught you self-discipline, self-control. But it also, when you entered religious life, everything was scheduled for you. So, you just went where the bell called you to.
Right.
We call that the voice of God, the bell, So whatever that called you to, you went from one exercise to the other to the other. Well, when you get in ministry and you get on your own, you better have a schedule that you could make sure you're praying the way you're called to pray, that you're taking time for yourself. So you're not, ministry just doesn't overcome you. And for so many, I think priest religious ministry overcomes you, because it's so demanding, and there's less to go around. So
Yeah, I mean, as a layperson working in ministry, that I found that to be the case personally. It's kind of like when you're always pouring out your cup to someone else, then you forget about yours, and it can end up being
you
full
have to
or
fill
empty.
your cup.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important. I remember Mother Teresa. She was so adamant about her sisters. She would say, "Your sisters first, not social workers." So remember, your commitment is first and foremost the praise of God. And prayer. So, or else you have nothing to give.
Sure.
You have nothing to give.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your personal vocation journey with us today. In going forward, maybe would you have any words of wisdom to offer for young men and women, or anyone of any age that is seeking to listen more intently to the Word of God for that call in their life?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for asking that. I took as my mantra a long time ago, just an ordinary prayer, an ordinary prayer that we walk this life but once. Any good that you can do, any kindness that you can give, any love that you can show, do it now, because I won't walk this way again. So the Lord gives us a lifetime to grow, to give, and to respond to His love. And I would say to any person who's thinking about religious life, if God is calling, He will walk with you. And, when the Lord says in the gospel, anyone who has left mother, father, sister, brother, land, for my sake will receive 100-fold in life eternal. Well, I know in my 61 years that I certainly have received more than I have given. And the Lord will not be outdone in generosity. So I would invite people not to be scared, but to work through it. God does work straight with crooked lines, and I know from my own history. There are going to be challenges, absolutely. But there's challenges in any way of life. And you know that from married life. I mean, there's one challenge after another. And, if we don't know how to deal with the challenges and make them opportunities of growth, we fold. but rather saying these challenges are going to help me to grow in God's love, and He will be directing me. So my prayer for anybody who is contemplating religious life, married life, any calling that God would give is hang in there. God will see you through it. God bless you.
Thank you so much for that, Father John Joseph, and for your time today, and like I said, for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure to get to know your story and what called you to your life here at the Abbey. It's a pleasure to get to know all the Norbertines in this greater context this way. So I hope that our listeners and viewers at home appreciate it as much as I have. And if you do feel as if you're experiencing that call to that next step in your life, be that a religious vocation, be that marriage, be that whatever it is that you may have been discerning or you feel as if God is calling you to, know that the Abbey is open for personal and private retreats. So you can reach out to 610-601-8702, and I will personally be happy to arrange that time and date with you for you to be able to come to the Abbey, whether it's for an overnight. Some people like to do week-long retreats here. Others maybe just want to come for the day and spend a few hours here in prayer and enjoy the serene landscape and scenery here of the Abbey, both inside and out. So you'd also have the opportunity to meet someone like Father John Joseph and potentially have that conversation about vocation. So if you are feeling that call to profess religious life, particularly with the Norbertines here at Daylesford Abbey, you can reach out to vocations@daylesford.org. And Father John Joseph is a part of our vocations team, so he very well may be that person that you come into contact with at some point. So you can always reach out to us at that email address or visit daylesford.org/vocations. And finally, we just want to express our gratitude here from Daylesford Abbey and the Springhouse Media for your support, whether it's through your financial support, your prayers, or by sharing this content. We are most grateful. So please subscribe to our page, like us, follow us, and share the good news by sharing this podcast as well as all of our Springhouse content with those that you feel may benefit from it. So until next time, thank you very much for tuning in, and God bless.